Hello, this is Sophia. Anyways, that question I asked last week about what you drink at home, I wasn't really expecting it to become an alcohol question so quickly, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. Kind of goes to show how naive I am. Bob, you asked how I deal with it if I hear people going around throwing the word gay around in a negative way. And for one thing, I'll say I do not consider it ever appropriate to use the word gay as an insult. Ever. It's never appropriate. As for do I stand up and correct them? Well, that depends on a number of variables. It depends on the situation and my rapport with whoever is doing it. If it's a situation where I have no influence whatsoever on the people who are doing it and they're only liable to kick it up a notch and maybe retaliate if I say anything, I figure what's the point? However, if there's a chance, however, that I can get them to see that what they're doing is inappropriate by pointing it out, yes, of course, in that situation, I'm going to say something because, as I mentioned, it is always insensitive and inappropriate for someone to use the term gay, in a negative way, that is. One time there was someone who I feel comfortable explaining to when he does things wrong, and he was using the term gay in a negative way. And he responded by saying, like, oh, I can do it because I'm bi-curious, so I can do this. And like, no. It does not work that way. If you are a bona fide gay guy, that is not bi-curious, but a full, completely gay guy, then you're entitled to use the word fag. But even that you're not allowed to use in a negative way, and only if you're a full gay guy. Technically, it's not appropriate for me to use the word fag because I'm not a gay guy. But since I'm using it for the purpose of explaining when one is or is not allowed to use the word, that doesn't really count as a use of the word. So, for that reason, I guess I'm not committing any specific social vice by using it. Just like the term tranny is a word which I don't find offensive when I or another transsexual uses the word, but I am kind of offended by the word tranny when someone who isn't transsexual uses that word. But nobody, in my opinion, nobody, whether they're a gay guy or not, whether they're transsexual or not, or no matter where they fall in the LGBT spectrum, nobody has the right to use either of those terms in a bad way, even if they have the right to use those terms at all. And though anyone has the right to use the term gay, nobody has the right to use that term in a negative way, in my opinion. In my opinion, and by right, I mean by not having the right, I don't mean that they should be arrested or anything. I just mean that it's not appropriate. Matthew, you asked what person in history I would like to meet, and after thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it, I'm sorry, but I'm coming up dry. I really can't think of anything. Sorry, no answer there. Megan, you asked if there's any song which is a really special song that takes me to that special place no matter how many times I've heard it. And, well, it's kind of a toss-up, but after considering a few songs which is kind of a toss-up between, I decided as my answer to say that it's Amazing by Aerosmith, which is a song that really speaks to a lot of experiences I've had in my life. Mark, you asked how I handle boredom. And the truth is, over my life, there's been different times that I've been bored, and I've handled it in many different ways. I remember one time when I was sitting in a coffee shop with nothing to do, and because I was bored, I actually got out some grid paper, and I don't remember if it was a pen or a pencil, but I got out a grid paper and a writing implement, and on that grid paper, I actually wrote a bulk emailing program in Perl, which later on, when I typed it into the computer, it ran perfectly. And yes, that bulk email program that I wrote was complete primitive jokes against anything they have today, but at the time that I wrote it, I believe it was actually far more superior and advanced than any other bulk emailing program that existed at the time. Other times when I'm bored, I deal with it in other ways, like my studies of the supernatural, for example. If I have supplies with me, I might even use it artistically. There's that's one thing that's nice about how I deal with things when I'm bored. As long as I'm not forbidden to do anything, the sky's the limit. Win-Win, you wanted to know how many places I've lived and how that's affected my acceptance of who and what I am. Well, I'm just flusterbated by your question. But anyhow, the first part I can answer. The second part, if I were to answer that as well, there is no way I'd fit this equally awesome video within the 10-minute time limit imposed by YouTube. As for where I've lived, I was born in Rochester, New York. At the time of my second birthday, my whole family moved to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and obviously I moved with them. At age 19, I left home and went to Lafayette, Indiana for a year. West Lafayette, Indiana, I mean, for a year. Age 19, in disgrace, I moved back into Oak Ridge, into my parents' place. At age 23, I moved out of my parents' place again into a very tiny apartment, which was basically one room except for the bathroom, in the Fort Sanders area of Knoxville. And I lived in the Fort Sanders area in Knoxville for 5 years in a total of 3 different apartments. When I was 28, I moved back into Oak Ridge, only instead of moving back into my parents' place, I got this house where I live now, which is my own place. So these are the places where I've lived. As for how that's affected my acceptance of who and what I am, there really isn't time enough in this video for me to answer that. Anyways, I don't know if it's the lighting or if it just faded faster than I hoped, but I noticed it for some reason. It's not that obvious right now on this video that I've dyed my hair, which is kind of unfortunate because I guess it is kind of the lighting, but I do wish it was visible for more different lightings. So I wonder, for anyone else, has there been ever anything that you've done which turned out not to be as obvious as you wanted it to be? I'll make it that my question, because frankly, the only alternative is for me to pull a bob, so that's my question.